right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining in. I'll just give everybody a couple minutes to get logged on here, and then we will get started. As you're logging on, if you would like to put in the chat your name, where you're from, what your role is. I know sometimes we have athletes logging on, sometimes it's athletic trainers, parents, friends. So if you want to go ahead and put in the chat just a little bit about yourself, that would be great. All right, and we'll just wait a couple more minutes as people are logging on. All right. Welcome, everybody. We'll just wait a couple minutes here till we start our weekly webinar. All right, as you're logging on, if you want to go ahead and put in the chat your name, where you're from, what your role is, that would be great. All right, and we'll get started here in just a minute. All right, it looks like it's time, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for everybody for joining tonight's weekly webinar series from My Sports Dietitian. So tonight the topic is role of sleep on athletic performance. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about, what's important about sleep. Why do we need to make sure we're getting enough sleep? To make sure that we are being the best athletes we can be, or that we know how to teach our athletes about it if you are a trainer or a dietitian or any other role you may have, coach, anything like that. All right, so first, let me take a minute just to introduce myself. So my name is Allison Catino. I am a registered dietitian. I am a former Division I soccer player, so I do understand, some of the struggles or things that athletes go with, especially when it comes to getting enough sleep. I got my master's degree in exercise and nutrition science from Lipscomb University in Nashville, Tennessee. And I'm now a nutrition and dietetics instructor at Tennessee Tech University. So I'm located in Cookeville, Tennessee. That's where I'm presenting from tonight. And I'm also working towards a PhD. So I'm really interested in research and athletes and what could help them have extra advantage out there in the performance world. So I'm working on that right now. And the concentration is health behaviors and wellness education. All right, so tonight, this is what we are going to learn. We're going to talk about why sleep is important, how much sleep is enough, different types of sleep, what suboptimal sleep can do to you. So some of the negatives of not getting enough sleep. We're going to talk about how to enhance sleep. So it's kind of a little bit of sleep hygiene, things to avoid that might compromise sleep, and then also some supplements that might be beneficial for sleep, especially if you're struggling with sleep. All right, so first, why is sleep important? So I know some of us already know this, but just a reminder of some of the things that sleep really does, especially for athletes. So it's going to help improve alertness and reaction time. So that's important in almost every sport that I can think of, is making sure that you're alert, you're ready to go, you can react appropriately. It can also increase levels of growth hormone and testosterone. It can increase muscle protein synthesis and repair. So this will lead to a decreased risk of injury. It can decrease the stress hormone levels in the body, and that's called cortisol. A result of that would be improved mood. It can also normalize appetite. So sleep's going to help regulate hormones like leptin and ghrelin that help our bodies know when we're full and when we're hungry. It'll also help improve immune system function, so help fight off illness and regulate metabolism. So how much sleep is enough sleep? All right. So the goal is to aim for 7 to 10 hours per night. It's individual per everybody, but most everybody's going to want to get somewhere in that 7 to 10 hour range. A 30-minute nap is appropriate before 4 p.m. if you're the type of person who likes to take naps. And for an average of 8 hours of sleep a night, that would be about a third of your day. So that's one way you can think about it. So average of 8 is usually what the recommendation is. I like this graphic here you can see on the slide. So how much sleep is enough? And we're talking about cognitive performance, reaction speed specifically, compared to how many hours someone has sleeping at night. So you can see across this line here, across the top, this is someone who is getting 9 hours of sleep every night of bed. Their cognitive performance stays consistently high for the entire week. But then you see someone here who has 3 hours a night, their cognitive time or their reaction speed performance decreases pretty rapidly if they're only getting 3 hours of sleep per night. All right, so it's not going to be good for that reaction. You're not going to be alert, ready to go like you should be as an athlete. So there are some different types of sleep. So we have non-REM sleep and REM sleep. So stage 1 is non-REM, so it's very light sleep. Stage 2 also is non-REM, it's light sleep. Stage 3, non-REM, that's deep sleep. And then we have stage 4, which is we call REM stage. So REM is short for rapid eye movement. So in this stage of sleep, eyes are moving very fast in different directions and breathing patterns become irregular. But this is actually what we call the restorative sleep. So this is that deep restorative sleep that we want to make sure that we're achieving to make sure that we're recovering and getting the rest that our bodies need. And one thing, when we leave that REM stage, we can begin that cycle again. So say someone's woken up, they leave that, they can go through that cycle again to get to that deep sleep. But one thing is it can take us a little time till we get to that deep sleep. So that's also an importance of making sure that you have plenty of hours of sleep every night. So some negative impacts of not getting enough sleep. So one is there can be a decrease in growth hormone and testosterone. There can be a disruption in metabolism, increased risk of injury, slower recovery times post-injury. Athletes can become moody or irritable. There could be decreased alertness and reaction time, so they're just not going to be as quick, ready to go as they should be. There's going to be an alteration in some of those appetite regulating hormones, so it can cause someone to eat more food and potentially negatively alter body composition. It can increase cortisol levels, increase heart rate, and have an earlier onset of fatigue. So if we have an athlete who only slept 3 hours one evening and the next day they went to go play a soccer game, they may get tired or fatigue quicker than they would if they had a well-rounded rest the night before of like 8 to 9 hours of sleep. Okay, so some tips on how to enhance your sleep. So one is to have a consistent bedtime and wake up time. So get your body in that rhythm of making sure you're going to bed the same time, waking up every day, and get in that track. You can keep your room dark and cool. So I know usually the temperatures within like the 60s is what's recommended to make sure that your body is cool and sleeping well at night. This is a difficult one, especially for the younger crowd out there, but avoid using screens 1 to 2 hours before bed. So that would be like watching the TV, having your phone, scrolling through Facebook, whatever you do. So that's something to think about too, especially if you are struggling to sleep well, considering, am I sitting here scrolling on my phone before I go to sleep? You can avoid the use of alcohol, caffeine, nicotine. You can use a weighted blanket. So I know there's a lot of weighted blankets out there that help people sleep better. And then if you do take naps, take them prior to 4 p.m. so your body is ready to go to sleep at bedtime. So some nutritional tips for better sleep. So you do want to avoid consuming heavy meals right before bedtime. You can consume just a whole, well-rounded diet, rich in fiber, whole grains, fruits, vegetables. You can consume a high carbohydrate meal about 2 to 4 hours before bedtime, definitely 2 to 4 before bedtime and not right before. Regular kiwi consumption an hour before bed has been shown to improve sleep, and even tart cherry powder or juice. I know it's usually about 4 to 8 ounces of tart cherry juice that's recommended to drink before bedtime, and that can help with sleep, and that also can help with recovery, sore muscles, and inflammation in the body. And there are some brands that actually sell bottles in 8-ounce portions if that's something that you want to think about trying. So some things to avoid that might compromise sleep. So one, high caffeine intake, especially later in the day. So I would say, think about cutting off that caffeine intake after lunchtime to make sure that it's still not in the system when you're trying to go to bed at night. Again, avoid naps after 4 p.m. You can have a high water intake in the last hour before bedtime, or try not to do that. And, that reason is because you might end up needing to wake up during the night to go to the bathroom. You want to avoid alcohol 4 to 6 hours before bedtime. Avoid heavy meals within 4 hours before bed. Avoid nicotine intake, and then even cheese before bed. So these are some supplements for sleep that are recommended, and you may like trying some of these. Anytime we talk about supplements, we want to make sure you're considering any other medications or supplements that you're taking, and also get the advice of your doctor. But these are some supplements that have been shown to help with sleep. One is magnesium, and you can see that there are 2 different recommendations for females, about 360 milligrams daily, males 410 milligrams daily. Also glycine, so 3 grams consumed before bed can help with get adequate sleep. Melatonin, so 2 to 3 milligrams daily, and that's usually taken about 30 minutes to an hour before bedtime to make sure that the body is ready to go to sleep. Ashwagandha, so this is kind of a supplement that's been talked about more, I would say, in the past year. So taking 300 milligram extract twice daily could help with sleep, and also just kind of helps with overall like anxiety, things like that, helps with mood. Chamomile, I know there's a lot of chamomile teas that sometimes people will drink before bedtime, and it comes in the supplement form as well. But 900 to 1200 milligrams is usually the dose that's helpful. Lavender, that's another great one. 6 to 10 drops of lavender would be helpful. And there's also valerian root. So 300 to 600 milligrams consumed before bed would be helpful as well. Would say if you're already a great sleeper, or the athletes you are talking to are great sleepers, these are not necessary. But if you've tried, all the other things we've talked about, like limiting screen time, cutting out alcohol intake, caffeine, making sure you're not napping before the afternoon, then this might be something that can help you get some better sleep. Again, I would recommend speaking with a doctor before you and an athlete begins taking that. All right, so here's a couple case studies that we're going to look at. So this first athlete, his name's Jack. He's 17 years old. He's a 2-year varsity cross-country athlete. So he's told his coach that he's feeling extra fatigued this week at practice. Okay, so when we kind of looked at his schedule, we know that he wakes up each morning at 7 a.m. for school. His team runs 6 days a week with 2 strength and conditioning sessions in addition to that. He plays Xbox for 2 hours with his friends every night before he goes to bed at 12 a.m. He drinks coffee on his drive home from practice at 6 p.m. And his annual doctor's checkup of magnesium deficiency has been identified. All right, so first, what are some steps he can take to improve his quality and duration of sleep? All right, so when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking noticing a few things. So if he wakes up at 7 a.m. every day, he goes to bed at 12 a.m., that's giving him about 7 hours of sleep. Okay, may not be enough for him. He might need more. He's 17, he's still growing, he's an athlete. Likely he's going to need a little bit more than that. So consider going to bed earlier. Also, another thing that sticks out to me is he plays Xbox for 2 hours with his friends every night right before he goes to bed. All right, so that's screen time, that's excitement, that's him chatting with his buddies. So that might not be appropriate for him to fall asleep right away if he's just been on the screen for that long. So potentially if they can move that up, or he could take a little bit of time when he's done with screen time to do something like read a book or something that doesn't involve screens. I also notice he's drinking coffee on his way home from practice, and that's at 6 p.m. So that might be a little too late to be consuming caffeine. It might still be affecting him later that night when he goes to bed. And then also that magnesium deficiency. So this might be a time where we would want to supplement. He needs it because he's deficient in it, and it also may help him with his sleep. So that could be something that he takes before bed at night. All right, so there's a few different options. And of course, we don't have to throw all of these at him at once. We could just start with one thing at a time. But there's some different options we can give him. And potentially he can choose whatever he feels he could do right then. So next question, would a nap during the day be beneficial for Jack? So potentially, if there was any time during the day before 4 p.m., he felt like he could squeeze in a 30-minute nap, that might be appropriate for him. Maybe his schedule is going to, maybe he needs to do that. Sometimes I personally take a nap during the day just to have a little bit of a mental break and reset. So that's something to see, is it in his schedule? Does he have the time to do that? Does he have like the ability to do that? And then how many hours of sleep should he be aiming to have? So anywhere from that 7 to 10 hour range would be appropriate. And of course, everyone's a little different. So we would have to kind of see, maybe just start with him getting 1 more hour of sleep a night and see how he feels. All right, so one more athlete we're going to look at. So this is Emily. She is a 21-year-old. She's a female college soccer player. She's a starter for every single match. As the season progresses, her performance is dropping and her coach is expressing concern. From the information below, it is clear Emily is not getting enough sleep. So this is what we know about her. We know she wakes up every morning at 6 a.m. for weights. She stays up doing homework on her laptop till 2 a.m. Since turning 21, Emily and her roommates are prone to having a few glasses of wine in the evening, and their apartment is kept at 78 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, so first question, first thing to think about. So what time should Emily be aiming to get to sleep at? All right, so she gets up at 6 a.m. for weights. So say we want her to get the average 8 hours of sleep a night. We need to have her going to sleep at about 10 p.m. All right, her current regimen, she's only getting 4 hours of sleep per night. And one thing I've noticed is these young athletes, especially in the college age, they're like, I'm fine. They're in college, they think they're invincible. But I think this might be something, if she doesn't think this is an issue, we could show her some of that, like that graph I showed you guys with the reaction time. We might have to actually show some visuals and let her know that this really might be affecting your performance. Okay, so let her know that. And that might help motivate her a little bit of why she needs to be trying to go to sleep earlier. Okay, and we may have to look at, her schedule. So why is she still doing homework at 2 a.m.? Maybe we need to look at, time management skills and things like that so she can get into the bed by 10 p.m. So what temperature should she aim to have the apartment? So again, somewhere in the 60s is optimal temperature for sleep. And we're seeing that their apartment is at 78 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's pretty hot, and she may not be getting comfortable sleep at that temperature. So we may want to inform her, even if she doesn't want that during the day, but at night, turning on some cooler temperatures to help promote more restful sleep. And then what should we suggest to Emily with regards to her alcohol intake? So we do know alcohol intake a few hours before bedtime can disrupt sleep. So we could talk to her about that and let her know that that may not be helping her performance. If the alcohol intake is negatively affecting her sleep, then her performance is dropping, and that may be part of it. All right. So we would just kind of cover some of this with her, let her know we're concerned. This is now affecting her performance. And these are some kind of pretty easy tweaks we could try to make to get her to feel better, have more energy, and get that performance back up where it needs to be. All right. So just a couple examples of athletes, and these are very realistic too. This is something that I think a female college soccer player would have trouble with, especially because I was one myself. Okay, so some action steps in review. So we need to develop a bedtime routine without screens. Okay, so that's something we can recommend with athletes. And it's a really difficult one because most of us go to sleep with our phones plugged in beside us on our bed or our nightstands. So getting them, into something different, reading a book, just something besides looking at that screen. One thing that you can do is set your phone or tablet to night shift at least 1 hour before bed. So it at least dulls the screen a little bit so it's not so bright in the face. Introduce a magnesium supplement before bed. You want to make sure you make your bedroom dark and cool environment. You can make a list of things you need to do the next day to minimize stress. So if you're that type of person, when you go to bed, you start thinking of everything you need to be doing the next day, just go ahead and write it all out so you don't have to think about it when you go to bed. And you can teach your athletes that too. Watch caffeine intake, especially later in the day. So see, do I sleep better on the days that I have caffeine or don't have caffeine? So try to track that a little bit. And then also remember that being an athlete is a 24-hour commitment, not just when you're at practice. Okay, so even your decisions you're making of when you're doing your homework, how late you're staying up, all of this affects your performance. And I think sometimes athletes forget that. So this is just a good reminder of that. Okay, and then just a little encouraging quote. So if you fail to prepare, you're prepared to fail. All right, so this just talks about preparation, making sure the athletes with busy schedules know how to time manage so they can get adequate sleep. They come with a plan, a routine ready, a bedtime routine. I know that sounds kind of silly because that's usually what we talk about with, infants, toddlers, but we still need that even as adults, right? We need to make sure that we plan to get our adequate sleep. Therefore, we can have adequate performance. All right, so if you are interested in the role of sleep on athletic performance, you can scan this QR code here just to find some more information on how to improve your sleep. So I'll leave this up here just for a couple more seconds for you all. All right, and finally, I want to introduce you to this great resource that my sports dietitian can offer you, and it's called My Nutrition Plan. So with this plan, we can offer you a free 2-week trial. All right, and within this free 2-week trial, you can have one-on-one sports nutrition coaching from a registered dietitian. So we can work on goals like managing body weight, pregame meal planning, daily nutritional strategies, personalized supplement protocol, and weekly check-ins with your sports nutrition coach. So all of that can be done in that 2-week free trial. And then if you feel like this is something that you like, you benefit from, you want to continue, you can think about signing up for a 3-month membership. All right. So some of the goals we can achieve in this 3-month membership would be personalized to you. So it can be to improve body weight, energy levels. We can talk about sleep hygiene if we need to, focus, recovery, injury prevention, all sorts of topics related to sports nutrition. All right. So we're here to help you become a better athlete. And this is one of the resources that we have for you. All right, so this is just a screenshot of what it looks like within the app. So you could see here, if you download the app and you go to connections, programs, and resources, and then you go to sports dietitian, this is where you can request working with a dietitian. All right, and get your 2 weeks free trial. Right here, this is a QR code to the My Nutrition plan. So if you're interested in getting started on your 2 weeks free trial, you can go ahead and go there and get started today. All right. And again, if you love it, you want to continue it, there are options to continue your subscription. All right. Well, that is it for today. Thank you all for joining. And I hope you all have a great evening.